And Kristen, let me know when I'm coming toward the end, please, when I need to cut it.
Time.
Okay.
You can send me a private message.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're happy to see you, especially as we begin this Holy Week. It's a good time to come together, and especially a good day to hear from Barbara about our work at the UN. We know that we all want to respond to what is happening in our world right now, so we're really very blessed to have Barbara here with us. And we're still letting a few people in, so just give us a second, and then we will begin. Okay, I think we got most people in. Okay. So we ask that during Barbara's presentation and our prayer, you remain muted. We will have time at the end for some questions or responses to Barbara's presentation, but it helps our sound if we all just remain muted until then. So I think, Kristen, I think we're ready to begin with our prayer. So let us, at this beginning of this Holy Week, pray this prayer together. I will read it just because it's easier than all of us reading it together. But before we begin, let us just settle ourselves and remind ourselves that we are in the holy presence of God as we are in the presence of each other. And we pray for all those in our world who are suffering. And we remember them especially during this Holy Week. And this prayer is taken from our consensus statement. Stimulated by the Holy Spirit of love and receptive to the Spirit's inspirations, we move always towards profound love of God and love of neighbor without distinction, from whom we do not separate ourselves, and for whom, in the following of Christ, we work in order to achieve unity of neighbor with neighbor and neighbor with God. In humility, the Spirit of the incarnate Word. In sincere charity, the manner of St. Joseph, whose name we bear. In an Ignatian Salesian climate, that is, with an orientation towards excellence, tempered by gentleness, peace, and joy. And we begin with Maxim 46. Live with the Lord on the cross. Die to pleasure and to vanity. Live only for God and die completely to self. That's Marcia Allen's translation. And this is a translation of that maxim by high school students. Let go of your ego to free your whole self. It's way less complicated. Thank you, Kristen. And so now we're going to really turn this over to Barbara Bozak. And Barbara, as you know, is our representative at the UN. Barbara returned from Le Puy very late last night, so we really appreciate her being with us today. So Barbara, we're just going to turn it over to you. And I know that Kristen is going to do your slides for you when you wish them. So Barbara, thank you again for being here.
Thank you very much for being here. It's always a pleasure for me to talk about who we are at the UN and what we do there. I was recently, the last 2 weeks, in Italy and France, and I did one presentation in Italy and I did another one in France. So hopefully my mind will be okay in English as well. It's always good to get people involved in who we are. This first slide is very simple because it has the logo of who we are as Congregations of St. Joseph. We are known at the United Nations, our NGO is known as Congregations in the plural of St. Joseph, and we're an NGO in general consultative status with ECOSOC. It means we have the highest status that's possible with regard to the United Nations, and the Economic and Social Council is the group under whom we are. Next slide, please. This is the symbol outside the UN, which some of you, I'm sure, have seen if you've been there. To me, it's very, very important because it really speaks about why the UN exists. You all know that it came into existence after World War II as an attempt to make sure we never fell into a world war again, or any war, actually, although we do know that that is not quite what is happening. But I think it's very significant, and it talks about peace in an, if you will, the negative side of peace, what it is not. It is not war, it is not guns. Next slide. The Charter of the United Nations speaks of why it was founded. And it's very clear. Do they do it well? Not always. And I'll get into that. But it's to maintain international peace and security and develop friendly relations. If you read, these are taken right from the beginning of the UN Charter. And it's about relationships, cooperation, to achieve international cooperation in solving problems, to harmonize actions, to be a center for harmonizing the actions of nations. This is about really knowing the other. It's about getting to know who the other person is, sitting around the same table and listening and sharing who each of us are. And really, it's about relationships. You can't develop peace and security. You can't have international cooperation if you don't know the other, and you only know the other through developing relationships. And that's who we are as Sisters of St. Joseph, as a St. Joseph family, not just sisters, but everyone who is in the family of Joseph. That's our focus and our charism, is relationships. So it is very fitting that we be there at the UN, as Sister Gloria said many years ago. Okay, next. Next slide. This is, if you will, one picture of what that might look like. It's the goal of the UN in many respects. You may recognize it. It was a painting by Norman Rockwell, which you find in his museum in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. But Nancy Reagan offered the UN a mosaic. It's a huge mosaic. I think it's about 8 feet tall and 6 feet wide or so, on the 3rd floor of the United Nations. And it just represents people of every color, of every creed, of every age. And it's an attempt that we all support one another and live together in peace. To me, this really represents the ideal of the United Nations and the ideal of Christianity and the ideal of the family of Joseph. This is what we are working toward. Next, please. Some of you know this, some of you may have seen this, maybe seeing it for the 10th time, but it is fitting that we are at the United Nations. I represent about 25 congregations, or 30, between 25 and 30 independent congregations at the United Nations. And those congregations, with only a few exceptions, are regrouped under one of these banners. There are 3 international congregations, all of which are founded in and have their main office in Europe. The Sisters of St. Joseph of Chambéry, of which I am a member, the Sisters of St. Joseph of Lyon and of Annecy. Lyon and Annecy both being in France. My predecessor at the UN was a sister from Annecy, an Indian sister from Annecy, and before her we had a Mexican sister from Lyon. So we're taking our turns at the UN. There are also 4 federations worldwide. One in the United States that we are joined in that federation. There's also one in Canada, one in France, and one in Italy. And they represent sisters from many different countries in the world. Next, please. No, go back one. Thank you. This is just to give you an idea of where we are located. I could do more on that, but I won't do it today. But it's fitting that we be at the United Nations because we represent people worldwide. Our sisters, yes, but the people they work with, the people on the ground. So as you can see, we are definitely everywhere in the world. Next. This is just one photograph of the UN headquarters. If you ever get to New York and can take a boat down the East River, this is what you will see. And it certainly is fitting that we begin with just where we are located at the UN. And like I have an office about 2 blocks from this place. Next. It's important that you be aware of the fact that the UN has 3 main bodies that I'll be talking about today. One is the General Assembly, and that is, it's very significant that the General Assembly is made up of 193 member states, countries, each one having 1 vote. Why is it important that I say that? Because it means that every person, every state, every country there is equal. It could be the United States or Russia. It could be Haiti, Vanuatu, a small island nation in the Pacific, or any small nation. No country is more powerful than another. And that is significant. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, because we're going to go to the next slide where you're going to see the Security Council. Okay. Security Council is probably the one body that makes it into the news most often. The Security Council is formed of 15 members, 5 permanent members, the winners after World War II, the United States, Russia, China, France, and the UK. Okay. And each of those 5 members has the power of veto. So if they want to make a decision, and the United States, for example, when it tried to condemn Russia for going into the Ukraine, of course, it was vetoed by Russia. And then when Russia was supporting the Gazans, theoretically against Israel, well, perhaps against Israel, who vetoed it? The United States. So constantly, because they're on very far sides of an issue, almost everything gets vetoed by one of them. There are also 10 rotating members. I'll come back to the veto power in a second. 10 rotating members who have 2-year terms, and they are elected according to their geographical region. So the whole of the world is represented. And interestingly enough, in the Security Council, the president of the Security Council changes every month, and it's in alphabetical order. So whatever country happens to be president, they're the ones that make the agenda. They set up the agenda for the Security Council. So it's true that when the United States condemned Russia and wanted to sanction Russia for going into the Ukraine, and that was vetoed, what happened was then in the General Assembly, everyone came together and they voted against Russia and what Russia had done. And there might have been two or three abstentions, but the power of the General Assembly was in the fact that everyone had a vote and no one was more powerful than others. And that's important for us to be aware of. Next, please. The third main body is the Economic and Social Council, under which we happen to fall. And that has 54 members. Again, they're elected each for a 3-year term, etc. And they are the ones that deal, as the title says, as the name says, with economic and social issues. And we deal mostly with social issues. Next. One of the things that the Economic and Social Council does is organize commission meetings, which are annual. There are some that take place, every once in a while, or they're like the Oceans Conference is not every year, etc. But the Commission for Social Development is every February. The Commission on the Status of Women every March. The Commission Forum for Financing for Development in April, the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues in May, and the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development in July. All of you are welcome to come to any one of these. I can get you a pass to go in. Some congregations do, in fact, come regularly. The Congregation of St. Joseph sends sisters. We've had sisters from California at different times, or Carondelet. But if any of you are interested, we send out a letter. We need to know who you are. And there's a limit to the number of people we can get, but we've seldom filled our capacity. So if anybody's interested, just let us know. We'd be delighted to welcome you to New York, to the United Nations, and to one of these commissions. And if you're interested, I can give you more information. Don't have time today, but it's out there and it is possible. Next. Just very briefly, as an NGO at the UN, what do? We belong to different committees, and these committees are usually parallel to the commissions. There's a commission on the status of women. There's an NGO committee on the status of women. There's a commission on social development. There's an NGO committee for social development. And we are part of those. Marianne Senek of Brentwood follows the Committee on the Status of Women. I am involved in the Committee for Social Development and its grassroots subcommittee, through which we try to bring the voices of people throughout the world, from developing countries especially, but not only, to the United Nations when a topic is being discussed that they would have some input on. We've done that already this year. We will continue to do so. There are other committees like the Committee on Migration, the Committee to Stop Trafficking in Persons, that we interact with and follow their work. The other thing that we do, as far as we can, is interact with the President of the Security Council and the President of the General Assembly when they have briefings. Usually, not always, depending upon who the person is, the President of the Security Council will meet with NGOs during his mandate, her mandate, and have an open dialogue with us. We can go ask questions, make comments, so it's very free and open. And then there's also a group called Religious at the UN, RUN, which is made up of about 50 representatives of religious congregations who are present at the UN. We have monthly meetings, which is to share ideas and support one another, really. Next. These are just a few pictures. The one on top, you see me to the far right with 3 of my colleagues representing 3 different religious congregations, and the representative of Portugal. We had what we called a mission visit with him to present to him our ideas and the importance of the issues that we felt were important for the Committee for Social Development, for the Commission for Social Development. So at different times and for different reasons, we will meet with representatives of a country to express our concerns or to give them information. I'm working with a group that's concerned with Haiti. We've met with representative of the United States, of France, of Switzerland, of Canada, of Mexico. So we do this, it's a way of bringing voice of the people to the people who can make decisions at the United Nations. And they are grateful for what we can tell them and what we give them. The picture below to the left of me is in the General Assembly Hall during one of the meetings that was held last year, and to the right with one of my colleagues, a sister of Notre Dame de Namur. Next, please. I said the Commission on the Status of Women, and this year, 2025, the topic was Beijing plus 30. You may or may not heard about Beijing, but it was an amazing time in 1995 when 6,000 women, I think it was 6,000, were present in Beijing to speak about women's rights. And this year, there was a review and seeing how the implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action was going. And that flows from the Convention on the Elimination of All Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW. CEDAW, which was accepted at the UN in 1980 and signed by many countries, including the United States. However, it's very interesting. The United States signed its name to that, but it was never able to be ratified by the Senate because the Senate, our US Senate, has senators were now unwilling to support all of the ideas. Just for your information, there is a movement called Cities for CEDAW. If you're interested, one thing that you can do is find out what's happening in your area with regard to the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, and then followed by the Beijing Platform for Action. But what I discovered, for example, is my state of Connecticut has approved this and tries to put it into effect. Not all states do, and the United States as a country has not yet done that because it's a commitment to dealing with the main themes, which are civil rights for women, reproductive rights, and gender equality. The Beijing Platform for Action actually spoke about and gave force to some of the issues. There were 12 issues, but I pulled out a couple that I think violence against women is really important, and I think it's something we need to continue to work on. Then women, peace, and security, women in power and decision making, which is not always which does not always have a lot of weight in many different places, including our own country of the United States. We need to work on these things. And where do we work? We need to start by working locally, where we are. And then we move up to the state level, and only then probably will we be able to make an effect at the
national
level. Next, please. I was at the CSW this year, as were some women from Minnesota, from St. Paul, Minnesota. And we'd sometimes organize parallel events, which are events that talk about issues related to the topic, but they're not in the United Nations. They're off-site, if you will. And these were very interesting. The one on the top was women who had suffered. These are professional women. Every one of them is a professional woman from different countries, and they had suffered violence through the internet, sexual violence through the internet. One of them, the one in the white jacket to the left with the dark hair, is an expert in technology, and her face was taken and put on pornography, and she only found out when her friends told her about it. And so they spoke about their experiences and what they have done to try to change that. And they have actually set up organizations to help women who are going through that. Down to the right are there women from Haiti who spoke to the fact that in Haiti, according to the Constitution, 30% of those who are in governing need to be women. They need to have a 30% voice in all government activities. And right now, Haiti is without a government, but there's a body that has been set up to set up a new government. And on that body, there is not one woman. So they are fighting for that. They're fighting for their rights, which is really important. Next, please. I just want to briefly say the UN also has a seat in Geneva, where the Human Rights Council is based, which of course the United States has pulled out of, but that's okay. They don't need to be there. Next, please. The Human Rights Council does what? They have what they call a Universal Periodic Review, which means every member state is examined on their human rights record every 4 years. So, and NGOs can write what we call shadow reports. What we do is we ask our people on the ground for what's happening on a few different issues. And we get their input, which we then include in a report that we can, which we send to Geneva. And in 2022, I was involved with one in Brazil, Burkina Faso in 23, Congo last year, and this year I was part of a group of 5 who did a report on the US. And our particular group really dealt with the issue of racism to a great extent. So this is one thing that we can do as well. We can get the voices out there. Let me skip to the 2 more slides, please. Okay, you've heard of COP30, maybe, which will be in Brazil this year. It's the conference on the parties on climate change, and what they're trying to do is try to accelerate the global energy transition. And for the first time, this time, the Brazilian president, who is kind of running it, responsible for it, will be including Indigenous voices, which are really, really, really important. Next slide, and then I'll stop. Okay, I was present in Bolivia the beginning of January, and there was this gathering of what they call the Seminario, which are sisters and associates and members of the St. Joseph family from Latin America and the Caribbean. You see the whole group on the top. And during that time, and then there's a small group here on the bottom. Some of you may recognize Marielena Perales on the right, from California. But one of the things that we did talk about there is how we can organize as congregations of St. Joseph to be present at COP30 in Belém. And so we're working on that. So if you want information, I can also send you some on that. So this is just a little bit, it's a bird's eye overview. I'm always happy to welcome people to New York, give you more information or whatever, welcome you as well to one of the commission meetings. We'd love to see many of you there if you can make it. I can't pay your way, but I can guide you when you get there.
So,
okay, I'm good.
Does anyone have a question or a comment for Barbara? I mean, she gave us a lot of information in a very short time, and I feel I could listen to her for 3 more hours, even though I've heard from her before. There's so much to this agenda. But if anyone has a question or a response, if you would just either put it in the chat or raise your hand, and we will try to answer you. I'm having a hard time seeing everybody, so oops, I just lost everyone. Oh God, let me see.
We're really trying to, we need to get our, I guess, I work basically through justice coordinators. So, if your justice coordinator is not getting information out to you, you're not going to get the stuff that I'm sending out. So maybe we need a different kind of organization. If you're interested, you can always email me directly. Some people have to come to commission meetings. So anyway, I'm there.
Okay, I don't see any hands. If I'm not seeing you, just unmute and ask your question. But Barbara was very clear on what she does, and we are very, very grateful for all that Barbara and Marianne Senek, who Barbara mentioned, also works at the UN. Marianne has been there for many years, and she does a lot of research and participates in different committees. So we're very, oh, Bridget, I'm sorry, just saw your hand. Please go ahead.
I just want to thank you, Barbara. Hello, I'm Bridget. I'm from the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet here in St. Paul province. And I want to say thank you for the presentation, Barbara. Barbara has been very kind and generous with hosting. We bring St. Joseph Worker alum and young adults that really, I think, love the larger context to the sort of spirals of communities and the work of sisters and the work of women religious at the UN. So it's been really inspirational to our folks, connecting their work in nonprofits in different cities to really global systems and really raising up women's leadership has been really inspirational. So yeah, I highly recommend, yeah, just an experience. And just to thank you, Barbara, for your presentation today and for your support in helping folks understand the context at the UN and the work you do. So thank you.
And thank you, Bridget, because you are very faithful in bringing young people, especially young women, to the UN every year. So thank you for that.
There's one question in the chat box. What's the most important agenda you're advocating for? I think right now, perhaps climate change and all that's involved in that, which includes things like extractivism, the mining, which number one creates environmental disaster on the one hand, and you were also involved in slavery to try to get all the minerals that we want for the climate change, for the batteries and everything we're looking at is climate change. We recognize the very complexity of the issue. It's not neat and simple. Can we get rid of fossil fuels? Maybe, probably not, but maybe we can control them. So, I mean, climate change and getting ready for COP30 is really, really important for us. The other thing that I'm very involved in right now is trying to find some way of helping Haiti. We've been working on this for about 3 or 4 years, and we have brought the voice of Haitian people to the ears of the United Nations, which otherwise would not have been there.
Thank
So
you,
that's
Barbara.
what I'm doing. Not the
You
only
do-
thing, but
You do a lot, Barbara. It's very hard to speak about it in a half hour. Right? You could go on for hours, and we would love to hear you. But I want to thank Barbara for spending time with us this afternoon. You know, these Dear Neighbor series are just limited to a half hour, and sometimes I feel bad about that because I know there's much more that we could learn from Barbara. So we will have to have her back in the future. I'm going to ask Kristen to put up the slide with our future meetings. If you can see here, it's a little small, but next month, May 21st, we will have a presentation by the associates to understand more of the associate movement. And so we're very happy to have them. And on June 18th, we're going to talk about the justice action that will be taking part of the 375th celebration. You know, when we have a large meeting like that, we always have a justice action. So we will explain that to you on June 18th. And in July and August, we're going to take a summer break. And we hope to see you back in September, and we will send you more information on what is going to happen in the fall. But we hope we see many of you next month when we talk about the associates. So thank you again for your presence. Thank you again, Barbara, and thank you for all you do. We really appreciate it. And we wish you all a very blessed Holy Week and a joyous Easter. And please continue to share the good news wherever you can. And so thank you all, and we hope to see